we're going to keep using this same thumbnail sketch. I'm not sure if it means I'm being efficient or just lazy, but those same three shapes that we use as an example for how to use central vertical axis to help align the elliptical core that gives you the edges so that a human-made shape can be drawn, that it has a sense of balance and symmetry. That was how we started with this thumbnail sketch, a small study sketch. We talked about positive and negative space using this same sketch. The positive space being anything within a closed shape that we want to give a name, and the negative space being anything that is a shape formed as a result around the edges of those recognizable or what we want to name as shapes and the edges of your composition, and the synonym being figure and ground. So now using that same sketch, we are going to work with what is called cross contour. So this is a basic contour line sketch, and at this point that's all we've talked about is contour line. So let's look at what cross contour would be. So if I'm looking at this shape and I imagine this is three-dimensional, and let's see, I have a 4B. Let's grab I'm going to grab a really hard pencil, a 2H. And remember, an H means hard, 2 means it's a fairly hard lead. Hard leads make light lines, so it's going to be a lighter line. Let's see if you can see that. I don't think that's going to show up. So instead, I'll grab a B. A B is like right in the middle. It's a non-committal. I don't want to be necessarily hard. I don't want to be necessarily soft. I make a slightly light line. So if I'm thinking about cross contour, it's almost like you're imagining you're a map maker. And what would that line be if that line was physically traveling down over the contour of each of these shapes that you're drawing? Since I'm looking straight on, I might not see much curve in that one absolute middle line. But as it gets closer to the edges, the contour will follow much more. And I didn't make these even interval. And if I wanted to, I went to this side. And let's see, we'll get another little line in there. I can come over here, and if I increase the frequency of those lines, not only are they cross contour lines, but they also begin to hint at the fact that there's some kind of light and shadow variation on that object. So those would be examples of one-directional cross contour lines. If I went on the interior, I could make lines that match these vertical, or I could say I want to follow cross contour lines, follow one of those edges. So I could just, I'm pressing harder on the line as I get around to the other side. And if I wanted, I could increase the frequency of lines on the one side. I'm just starting in the middle to suggest, once again, shadow and shadow. I could come to this shape and I could decide on the interior, for example. Cross contour means they're following the direction of one of the contours. I could make the interior follow the outer edge if I wanted. We'll use the same light and shadow that we're indicating on the other one, meaning I made the shadow more on the right side of the interior, and I'm going to follow the same thing. So this one all is using the same verticals. I could do that through the whole object, and on this little lip I could make them have that little bit of curve I see up there, and as it comes down I might be using less pressure, allowing that space to be greater. And I can see the full length of the line here, so we'll see the curve at the top and the bottom. So those are all cross contour lines. Down here I could choose this direction, and I could make all of my cross contour lines use the horizontal instead of the vertical edge of that drawing. And I'm not spending an enormous amount of time on this, and yet I can still see that just by adding those lines that go into the interior, it begins to suggest some three-dimensional illusion. I just picked up a 4B, so I'll make a couple really dark lines. So I can come over here on the dark side and pick a few of those cross contour lines I was already using, and I could enhance those, and that way this shape begins even having more value contrast, and in that value contrast I also begin to suggest a little bit more of that sense. So I could come down on the bottom here and let some of those lines begin really dark and then fade off. This is an example, by the way, of the one line quality where the line starts and then fades. So that's one of those ways that you can vary a line. So there's a basic, example, and I could do the same thing in the background. I could use lines that followed that angle to create a darker background. This is an example of cross contour line.